Hey guys, my name's Steph, I'm Botanist Cool, and today I am ecstatic to bring you my first impression about the Herbalist Primer by Anna Urbanic. As always guys, a huge thank you for all of your constant support with the Quest Helper series. Quest Helper is all about giving resources, talking about the fun and enjoyment and creativity of D&D to new and veteran players alike, and just having a great time. So if that sounds awesome to you, make sure to hit that follow button, the subscribe button, whatever it is on YouTube, and that notification bell, and let's get on with the rest of the video. If you guys can't already tell, I am really excited for today's episode because we're talking about the Herbalist Primer. It's a project I backed a little while ago and I've been patiently waiting for, and the physical copy is coming in the future, and we will talk about it when we get that physical copy. But we got the PDF version today, and I am so excited. Anna Urbanic and her team have created a book all about the magic, beauty, and science of plants and how it fits into a fantasy world. So this is great for inspiration for D&D 5e, Pathfinder, Tavern Tales, or any other fantasy world you want to make, whether it be a novel or whatever. It's great inspiration, it is great art, it is absolutely beautiful, and I am especially excited for it. Let me give you guys some context for why I'm so excited. Back in college, I studied botany. I even did a thesis under my professor. I got to learn all about the marshes, swamps, pinelands, scrubs, everything that there was to do with Florida, and I really enjoyed learning about the native ecosystems and the native plant life of Florida. And I continued that passion into my career, where I now work as an IPM specialist for a botanical garden / nursery. I make sure the plants stay healthy by providing healthy pesticide applications, by bringing in natural predators, and by conducting various scouts and surveys all across the garden and nursery. So I am really excited to finally sink my teeth into a plant-based D&D or fantasy game adjacent content, and it is just really exciting. So I don't know all the science a botanist would know, and the good news is they actually had a botanist check out all the science here, which is really cool. But so I don't know all the science a botanist would know. I do know some of it, and I'm going to reference a few things as I look through the content, and it's going to be really fun for me, and I hope you guys really enjoy it too. So I say we get right on into it and have some fun. And just a quick note before we start, I'm obviously not going to show the entire book. I'm going to show snippets and bits of what I really enjoy. If you want to see the rest of the book, buy it, order it, back it, whatever. Get it. I'm going to leave the links down below. It is a great book. I have no doubt you're going to love it. All right. Now, I've moved over to my right, and I believe your left. I'm not 100% sure. My second screen's over here with the PDF. You guys should be able to read it right on over here. Let's get right on into it. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I read a little bit of this already over my lunch breaks and over my normal work breaks that I had, and I'm already in love with this book. It is great. They say not to judge a book by its cover, but I implore you judge this book by the cover. It is gorgeous. Look at that cover. I look at that and I immediately think, when I'm going to open this book, I'm going to be transported into some magical greenhouse full of beautiful plants. It is a lovely cover. It is well done. Look at the detail in some of those plants, the veination on there, the details in the petals, the colors. Oh my God, I absolutely love this cover so much. And I'm actually about to start getting ahead of myself a little bit, so I'm gonna slow down real quick right there, because once again, this cover is amazing, and this is gonna be indicative of the rest of the artwork in this book, because honestly, it is fantastic. What I really appreciate about this book is that right at the start of it, the author gets to the root of the subject matter and starts talking about what botany is and what plants are. And yes, I planned that pun ahead of time, and I'm still laughing about it, so you'll have to excuse me for 1 second. But back to the matter at hand. It is really well done, giving the reader respect by making a foundation for which we are going to be learning upon later on throughout the rest of the book, and I really appreciate that. It is not easy to learn about botany or even zoology or anything like that, and just these first pages and this amount of respect that we're given immediately to really understand the basics, then build upon that, is something that I really appreciate quite a bit. And in later pages, she starts talking about the various differences between plants that we can use to identify them. And we're gonna get into that right now, actually. I will show you guys a few quick pages and tell you how the book presents the stuff, and then tell you how I use that information for my own food-based benefit. But let's go on real quick with the information that the book gives us, starting with the leaves. First and foremost, it is beautifully illustrated, showing us the different shapes and naming them, of course, different arrangements, different types, and different margins on leaves that you'll find in the wild. And there are quite a few very interesting mixes and matches that could help you differentiate between families and genuses of different plants. And what's really cool is on the next page, they go into more detail, giving you the anatomy of a leaf, which is really cool. They talk about the veins of a leaf. And even further on, they start talking about things like the surfaces of the leaf, what kind of surfaces there are, because that will actually help differentiate different species and genuses and so on and so forth, help you understand what plant you're dealing with. The next page is another great page because it talks about flower structure and how flowers are arranged on stems, and it's really cool. And hey, next page, they go more into detail, giving you a description of what's going on in the previous pages. I've used this information in real life to differentiate plants to eat in the wild. As an example, Rumix has a sword-shaped leaf. I can immediately tell what it's like because I know how the leaves are arranged on the bottom of the plant in the middle of a big cinnamon-like stalk. It is delicious. I know some Brassicaceae I could eat because of how the flowers are formed and how the leaves look and how the seed pod looks. And it is delicious. This book has multiple pages like this talking about the fruits, the stems, so on and so forth, and it really gives you a great basic understanding of how the biology of plants can present themselves so that you could differentiate what is maybe edible and toxic or just what the plant is for fun. It's a really good way of presenting information that gives respect to the reader, as always, and of course gives knowledge to the reader. We're turning from the scientific analysis and differentiation of the plants all the way to the fantastical world of herbalism, turning plants into medication. And this is where your herbalist or your alchemist is going to have a lot of inspiration drawn from. Now, the first page is talking about all the plant materials you're going to use as a herbalist or alchemist. And it's actually a lot of fun to imagine a store full of these. Like, you have the leaves of the bay, and you have twigs of juniper, and you have the sap of cedar. It's just a lot of cool stuff that you can say that you have in your shop, and it's a lot of fun. It gets me jittery as a DM, thinking like I could make this really crazy herbalist shop. It would be so much fun just to think about all these parts you could have. I honestly just thought about like the roots and the twigs and the leaves, and I didn't even realize I could also do the barks, the bulbs, and all that cool stuff, which really adds to the level of immersion you can make with a specifically herbalist shop or a herbalist character. And going on from that, you also have a few more things. The book talks about the biologically active compounds and how to properly harvest the plants you're actually going to be using during this time, which is really important. Believe it or not, you can't just chop a plant down and go about your day. You actually have to harvest it properly so that it can either grow back the next year, so that you can get more product out of it, or so that you just don't mess up and perhaps ruin the product you wanted to get in the first place. There's obviously the preservation part, where you can either freeze or dry your plants depending on the technology of the world you are playing in or you are enjoying. Once again, it's going to depend. You might not have freezing technology, so maybe you're just going to be drying a lot of plants, and that's perfectly valid. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of ways to really think about how to interact with the world as a herbalist and as an alchemist. And of course, you have your preparations and your processes over here, which actually talk a little bit about how you can prepare some of your things through infusions and through filtration and etc. And how you could actually prepare them to put them into an ointment, to put them into a plaster or a salve, or even a powder. You could make basically make like a Kool-Aid medicine, or you could make a rub-on lotion that gets rid of sunburns, and disinfects the different parts of the open wounds on your body. So there's a lot of things you can really do, and this does a great job of really giving you inspiration. And the next few pages actually have some medical terms like anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, so on and so forth, that you could actually use to describe your ointment, or you could describe the vinegars that you're using. So I recommend really giving that a look through, and obviously not memorizing everything, but just kind of really going through it and enjoying what is there and applying it to your character. Let's talk about Herbal Magic. This chapter is going to enhance your downtime spellcasting like no tomorrow, specifically the immersion. Now, in the middle of a fight, you're going to say, I cast Fireball, and you're pretty much done. And that's valid because we don't want to waste 3 sessions on one single fight. Rather, we want to use those downtime moments to make our spellcasting as fantastic and magical as possible. And this is going to be the chapter to do that. This chapter talks all about the potency of certain spells, when they're most potent, where they're most potent. It talks about the magical items you might have to use to make these spells as potent as possible. It talks about color magic. Believe it or not, according to this book, black is a color of protection. So if you're using black and blue candles, which is also another color for protection, you might make a really good protective spell for one of the rituals that's actually listed in this book. And there's sigils there, all about earth and connecting to the elements, and it talks about elemental ballads, and there's a lot of cool things in here. It talks about magical ethics, which is something that is big in D&D, and I will continually argue that enchantment magic is more evil than necromancy, because you can have a 7-year-old kid casting friends on someone and forcing them to be their friend against their will for a period of time. So it's a lot of fun to really think about, and this is going to enhance the downtime spell casting in terms of immersion. The next part takes a scientific description of plants, the herbal medicine, and the herbal magic, and mixes it all together to really identify and put these plants in a place in your fantasy world. And this is just a sample plant they've given us here, where it talks about some of the things you might see in other plants. As an example, is it a medicinal plant, a protective plant? Is it an edible plant? Is it a psychoactive plant? Or is it a poisonous plant? These are things that you should definitely know. It'll talk about the family, the habitat, the size, the life cycle, the foraging, the flowers, and the leaves, color, shape, orientation, all that good stuff. And it's going to give you a little size description, which is kind of really cool, and a beautifully drawn picture of the plant. And as an example, the next page has a bunch of stuff, including the description, the habitat and cultivation, foraging, then preparation, the culinary properties, poisonous properties, magical properties, etc. There's a mix of that scientific factualness with that fantastical world of herbalism and herbal magic. So it's really cool. And we're going to go through one plant as an example. And we're going to go through my favorite fantasy plant. Let's talk about the Mandrake. Now, 90% of the time in fiction, the Mandrake is just screaming its head off, and if that's not me internally, I don't know what is. Anyways, the book talks about the Mandrake being medicinal, protective, psychoactive, and toxic. These are things that your alchemist, your herbalist should know about as they work with the Mandrake. And I give you some other cool scientific facts over here, such as the family, the habitat, the size, what the life cycle, what you're foraging from it, the flowers, and the leaves. Of course, a beautifully illustrated Mandrake on the top right-hand corner with the flowers and the fruit. This is a beautiful, beautiful page of basic information for your herbalist, and it's really cool. I love it a lot. And the next page goes even a little more in depth, talking about the description of the Mandrake, which is so cool. I love it. A highly toxic plant with characteristic humanoid roots, widely used in healing magic. It brings love, luck, and creativity while expelling demons and spirits. I love that description. It is so much fun. And then it goes further on to talk about how you can actually cultivate it and how you could forage it. It says that if you're gonna forage it, it has to be done in May by a full moon with an animal proxy that'll take the devil's curse and with your ears covered. It talks about how you can use it and boil the leaves in milk to make a poultice for ulcers and skin problems. It talks about how toxic it is. Once again, don't eat these guys, y'all. It's not a good idea. It talks about how it's a staple in healing rituals. So it really goes on into the fantastical world of the Mandrake and does this for a lot of plants. This book is 364 some odd pages long and has information like this all throughout it. It has information for this on basil, cinnamon, juniper trees, tobacco, which is a very interesting addition, or solanaceas in general, because that's the nightshade family. Great stuff. It has a lot of information on a lot of plants that you could use to make puzzles, you could use to make potions, and have a lot of fun with. And I just love it. I just love it. It mixes that science and the fantastical together for that science fiction, basically. not future sci-fi, but there's science and there's fiction, and it's together. You know what I'm saying? I love it. I absolutely love it. It is so great. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. This hasn't been out for a day, so I haven't read everything fully. But let me give you a few other things that I found that kind of stood out to me as a really cool thing that you could use to have some fun with. Lotus Roots, put them under your tongue and speak a magic word, boom, they open a door for you. It can be used once. Wait, what? That's wild. Sage has antibacterial and antifungal properties that you can use to make ointments out of. Cool. Medication, sterilize an open wound to make sure you don't get sick. Oh God, mistletoe. Make a ring out of the wood of mistletoe and you could be protected from hexes, at least a little bit, and that's really cool. And let's not forget rosemary, which purifies the air around it and expels evil. There are a lot of really cool plants and folklore in this book. Once again, it mixes the beauty of science and actual botany with the folklore and the occult and all that wild stuff, and I think it's really cool. Anyways, on to the next part. The rest of the book really talks about herbalism and the practical uses and the practical applications of it. It talks about the tools you're going to need to actually conduct herbalism, and I believe that's on a few pages from now. Yep. A mortar and pestle, clippers, sickle, leather gloves, sieves, colanders, so much more. And of course the Herbalist notebook right down the bottom. I see that. It's beautiful. It talks a lot about the recipes you could eventually make, including wines, jams, beers, tonics, and so much more. If we continue going down, anointing oil, astral journey capitalism, plant growth oil, powder of protection, wayfarer's beer. It has a bunch of recipes and it all uses the plants that are currently in this book. And you could just really go down the next few pages to talk about all this stuff, and there's a lot of really cool things in here. Chewing gum, lock-picking gum. What? It's kind of really cool. Hard candies. Iron breaker. Oh my God. I really have to read this in detail. I just got this PDF today and I am having a blast with it. Vinegar, banishing vinegar. What? Soaps, pest be gone. Really good. Necromancer's aid for candles, incenses. Oh my God, there's so many cool toxins and antidotes. Look, okay, it just basically gives you a lot of stuff to play with and really enjoy working. Treatments, gardening and cultivation tips. It goes on and on. All right, this is actually my specialty, pests and diseases. This is actually my specialty. It talks about aphids. Those are a big problem, but I will tell you this. In the garden I work in, 25% of the problems I currently face are spider mites. Those guys suck. And then add in cyclamen mites, flat mites, broad mites, and PT mites, and you get around 35 to 40% of all my issues in the garden, with the big three being aphids, mealybugs, and scales, taking another like 30 to 40% altogether. So they're big problems. Lepidopterans or caterpillars are also really big problems too. And that being said, there might be a whole other thing you can do with caterpillars. So some caterpillars have symbolism, some butterflies have symbolism. That's really cool stuff. And of course, there are the blights and the fungal leaf spots, the botrytis and the powdery mildew and stuff that your plants might get. We have some powdery mildew I gotta treat. We have some botrytis I gotta treat. We have fungal leaf spot I gotta treat. There's a lot of cool things. The pests and diseases part, really cool. I think y'all should have added mealybugs. Those things are absolutely terrifying. And you can make a really cool encounter out of mealybugs and giant aphids sucking the sap and the life force out of giant magical plants. Oh my God, that'd be really cool. Hold on a second. I think I got a campaign quest later on. The rest of the book is basically a bunch of tables that give you the TLDR on a lot of information. You have the flu, what plants might be good for that. You have a need to use a certain color for a certain reason, what plants are good for that, so on and so forth. And it really mixes a lot of cool stuff and gives you a basic understanding and just a easy to grasp practical way to understand what's going on inside the book itself that you could reference for more in-depth information later on. As I alluded to before, I just got this book today. I've only had a few hours to read it. I had a full day of work, plus personal issues I had to take care of, plus cooking and a few other things. So I skimmed the bare surface of what is in this book. And first impressions, immediate first impressions, I love the book so far, and I cannot wait for my physical copy. It has a fantastic mix of science and education and fiction and majesty and fantasy, and I'm in love with it. It's great. Anna Urbanik and your team, you all did amazing on this. Fantastic job kicking some serious butt with making a great game agnostic source for inspiration. If you guys really like this content, by the way, I will talk more about the Herbalist Primer and maybe even talk about some homebrew I have been thinking of making it based off the Herbalist Primer, because I am just like, my brain is like, I really want that mealybug fight to happen now, actually. Get these giant aphids and mealybugs fighting off a giant really plant. That's just something that's been in my head, and I think this is really cool. Heck, if you've got a friend who plays Alchemist, this is a great gift for them as a PDF. That's all I'm gonna say. Anyways, guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I had a lot of fun with it, and I had a lot of fun skimming over this book. I'm going to have to give it a serious, more in-depth read later on, because I did get the basics, but I really do need to give it a better in-depth read, because it's just that enjoyable. If you like the content, leave a comment down below. Tell me what you liked about it, and tell me if you want me to talk more about the Herbalist Primer and what's inside of it, because it is really cool, and I definitely do not mind talking about this more, and I will be talking about it more when the physical copy comes out. Anyways, guys, you all stay safe and stay Botanist Cool. I'm gonna see you soon. Bye, everyone.